What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about Kobe Bryant and how he faced the toughest competition in NBA history. And I think it is well documented that the West from 2000 to 2010, it was one of the toughest, if not the toughest conference in NBA history. But after doing a deep dive and really looking into it, I've come to the conclusion that Kobe, he faced the toughest competition in NBA history. And by the end of this video, if you don't already believe that, I'm pretty sure I'll convince you. So only a few days ago, a very popular YouTuber named Jimmy High Roller, he made a video about the toughest championship runs in NBA history. And in this video, he ranked all these runs by a stat known as SRS. And SRS, it basically takes the team's strength of schedule and evaluates how dominant they are over their competition. And we're looking at the top 12 toughest championship runs based on SRS. Here's what you get. At number 1, you have the 95 Rockets. At number 2, the 01 Lakers. At number 3, the 97 Bulls. At number 4, the 02 Lakers. At number 5, the 2000 Lakers, and so on. And I just want to note, out of the top 12 hardest championship runs ever, 4 out of those 12 teams featured Kobe Bryant. And even more impressive than that, 3 out of the top 5 teams also featured Kobe Bryant. Now the SRS stat, like many advanced stats, it can be good only when given proper context. So to provide that context, let's look at the top 12 hardest championship runs based on opponent's win percentage. Now once again, at number 1, you have the 95 Rockets. At number 2, the 97 Bulls. Number 3, the 2016 Cavs. Number 4, the 02 Lakers. Number 5, the 93 Bulls. Number 6, the 01 Lakers, and so on. And we're looking at this list, 3 out of the top 12 teams featured Kobe Bryant. And when you look at both top 12 lists for SRS and opponent's win percentage, Kobe, he appears on both those lists a total of 7 times. And even more impressive than that, he appears in the top 5 4 different times. Now for comparison, MJ, he appears 5 times on both those lists, and he appears 3 times in the top 5. And LeBron James, he appears 2 times total in both those lists, and only 1 time in the top 5. So right there is a pretty good indication of how tough Kobe's competition was, but I still don't think that tells the whole story. So to really understand how tough the West was in Kobe's era, let's look at the number of 50-win teams in the East versus the West from 2000 till 2010. And the results, they are alarming. As in the Western Conference, there's a total of 66 50-win teams compared to the East, where they only had 28. So that means that just a little over 70% of the NBA's 50-win teams in that decade came from one conference. And if you wanted to expand this list a little further and look at the number of 50-win teams from 2000 to 2013, here's what you get. In the West, there's a total of 80 50-win teams, and in the East, there was only 39. So just to be clear, there was double the amount of 50-win teams in the West compared to the Eastern Conference. And if you don't want to look at how good the teams were, and you want to look at how good the individual players were, let's look at the All-NBA players in the Western Conference versus the East from 2000 till 2010. And once again, the Western Conference absolutely blows the East out of the water, as there was 112 All-NBA players compared to only 67 in the East. And again, if you expand that scope only 3 years, you get the exact same results. As from 2000 to 2013, there's 129 All-NBA players compared to the East, where there's only 78. So in both those time frames, roughly 60% of the All-NBA players came from the Western Conference. And that right there once again proves that the West during Kobe's prime was way superior compared to the East. And a very interesting stat I found is that in NBA history, only 4 teams ever have faced a 50-win team in all 4 rounds of the playoffs. Those teams being the 94 Rockets, the 01 Lakers, the 08 Lakers, and the 2010 Lakers. And Kobe, he was on 3 out of those 4 teams. And I can already hear the people in the comments saying that Kobe, he wasn't the best player on the 01 Lakers. And yes, I will concede that Shaq, he was the better player than Kobe during that time. But even with that being the case, you can't just write off the 01 playoffs for Kobe, as during that playoff run, he averaged 29, 7, and 6 on 47% shooting. And during that playoff run, he was the leading scorer for the Lakers in the second round versus the Kings and the Western Conference Finals versus the Spurs. So I definitely think it's fair to say that Kobe, he played his fair share in that title. And just for sake of argument, let's forget Kobe's first three-peat and only focus on 3 specific years, that being the 08 season, the 09 season, and the 2010 season. As during those 3 years, Kobe, he beat a total of 10 50-win teams. And that means that in the playoffs, Kobe, he was facing a 50-win team at minimum in 3 out of the 4 rounds of the playoffs. And Kobe beating all those teams in that stretch, that's what makes the number 24 Kobe my favorite version of Kobe. And if you look at the teams he beat the 59-23 Magic that had Dwight Howard, Hedo Turkoglu, Rashard Lewis, and a ton of other shooters. He beat the Spurs that had Duncan, Parker, Ginobili. He beat a very good Jazz team that had Darren Williams, Carlos Boozer, and Andre Karolinko. He beat the Suns that had the dynamic duo of Steve Nash and Mark Stoudemire. He beat 2 different Nuggets teams that had Carmelo and AI, as well as Carmelo and Chauncey Billups. He beat a very young Thunder team that had KD and Westbrook, and he beat the Big Four Celtics that had KG, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Rajon Rondo. So I think all that information and all those stats, I think I have proven to you guys that Kobe faced the toughest competition in NBA history. And I think Kobe facing that competition and winning 5 championships, that's the most impressive thing about his legacy. And sometimes I think we forget how tough the competition was for the Shaq and Kobe Lakers just because they were so dominant. And the same thing can be said with the Kobe and Powell Lakers as they went back to back, but during that stretch, they faced some extreme competition and some extreme difficulty. So if you didn't think Kobe faced the toughest competition ever coming into this video, I hope I did change your mind. And if I didn't change your mind, let me know why, and I'll be super interested to see in the comments. So with all that being said, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time.